Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. No, this is not Rob. Rob is out currently conquering the world right now. It is producer JL coming at you here with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Dave, the owner of the website. Dave, how the heck are you?
You know, it's actually funny you said the man, the myth, the legend, because my wife, who, not born in this country, she lost the words on that exact phrase in a group text that we were sending with some work people. And this was like 7 minutes ago.
Wow, good timing, I guess. Either that,
That,
I have some telekinesis going on.
unless the telepathy, not telekinesis, you're not moving shit with your
Telepathy.
mind.
Well,
Okay.
you never know, David. Okay, I'm just saying, you never know.
Yeah. Charles Xavier, not Harry, I guess.
Well, fun fact, I am named after a Patrick Stewart character, so that kind of fits. But anyways, so
Yes. Anyway, yes. Glad to be here. Glad that, you know, 7 minutes ago I, had to figure out what words my wife was looking for because we've been up for a while already, courtesy of our first waking us up way too early. And yeah, brains aren't necessarily functioning, but brain power is optional when you're recording a podcast, right?
that is correct, and that seems to be the common theme. That's what's gotten people famous. But anyways, all
Wow.
right. So, but am I wrong though? I mean, come on.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I'm not. I didn't expect you to just like say it like that. I was being cryptic with the way I said it.
Well, somebody has to do it at some point. But anyways, we can go on about brain power and how it doesn't work in our favor all night. But let's jump right into it, Dave. So it's been an interesting month of January, and there've been a
Yeah.
couple of things that have gone on. We'll touch on Will Borgen's extension after, and we'll also get to some questions we received on socials. But let's just kind of, I want to get your feeling, Dave, on just the 7-0-3 month, if I'm getting that number correct. So they
Well,
basically,
8-3 and 3.
well, 8-3
They're
and
eight
3.
three and three, but they went on that 7-0-3 run.
All right, so 7-0-3 run, 8-3 and 3 altogether. So now currently the Rangers have 52 points, and they are 3 points, or rather 3 points out of a wild card spot. They are just right behind Montreal, Detroit, Columbus, Tampa Bay, and Boston, which is still incredibly obtainable. So even though they've had a couple of stinkers, well, I wouldn't say the Colorado game was a stinker, but you can touch more on that in a bit. Um, Overall thoughts, and then kind of maybe tell me if this losing streak, or rather the last two games that they lost, is that a cause of concern for the Rangers?
I mean, if we're talking absolutes, then no. But if, life is in the gray, so it's a yes and a no. Yes, we should be concerned because the Rangers lost two games to two teams in the playoff picture. And in this 8-3-3 month, they have five losses against teams that are going to make the playoffs: Washington, Dallas, Colorado twice, Carolina. So that is cause for concern. Their losses are against playoff teams, but they still won 8 games, and 8-3-3 is nothing to, be upset about. They needed to win the games. They need to figure out their stupid mistakes, which is costing them. And I just want to, I wanted to add context to the 6 losses. You got 2 blowouts. You got Washington blowout, Carolina blowout. Right? Those we know. We have the 3 OT losses, Dallas, in which they blew a 3-0 lead and surrendered the tying goal with, 4 or 5 minutes remaining.
Probably less.
You have the OT loss to Colorado in Colorado. That was in Colorado, I believe.
Yes, it was.
They surrendered the tying goal with a minute left. It
Just
was in the
about.
last 5. Yeah, somewhere in that area. The Montreal game, that one was rough because they never actually trailed in that game. They just kept giving Montreal an answer back. And Colorado, the most recent one, they surrendered the game-winning goal with 15 seconds left on a, quite frankly, brain-dead pass by Will Borgen. That was not a good pass by him.
No.
So we have 2 blowouts, and we have 4 games where the tying or game-winning goal was surrendered with under 5 minutes remaining. That doesn't necessarily change my answer in they needed the wins, but they couldn't beat the playoff teams. But it does add context. And remember, they were dominating Colorado for the most part. At least on Saturday, they were dominating Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing pretty well against Carolina, down 2-0 heading into the third after a pretty dominating second period. They just shit the bed in the third period. I mean, that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina is a cup favorite for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Colorado, not necessarily a cup favorite, but they're in the
Still
playoffs
pretty good.
every year. Yeah, goaltending is usually the thing that does them in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Dallas to me is my team out of the West. So, I mean, yeah, they lost, and we want to see them win, but do we really want to jump off the cliff on that? On 3 OT losses and 3 regulation losses, of which only 2 they were never really in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just the way I'm looking at it. It still doesn't change the way I feel about the season or this run, but it's context.
Right. And I guess just to kind of add to that, if you watching them play, like like you mentioned the Carolina game, they were in it for the first 2 periods. I thought they were actually really good. I think they were the better team in that first game, or the first 2 periods, and then like you said, they just kind of crapped the bed after a bit. And even in the Colorado game, they were on it, as I generally tend to say. It wasn't as if I guess maybe the only one you could probably say was maybe just for lack of effort, so to speak, was the third period against Colorado. But for the most part, outside of the blowout against the Capitals at the beginning of the month, I feel like they've been in pretty much most of these games. Like I like to look at the Vegas game that happened on the 11th of January. I thought that was probably one of the better games they've played all season. It was a very defensively tight game, and you really began to see a lot of what they were trying to build ever since the trades happened kind of come together, because it's right after the Devil game that they won in overtime with Sam Carrick. So you can kind of see that they were really beginning to hit their stride. They had it a little bit in the Dallas game, but it was kind of sputtered around here and there. But you really began to see it after that Devil game. And honestly, I kind of tell some people that, I think that Devil game really saved the season, so to speak, because that kind of set them off. Unfortunately, they lost against Colorado, but it was still a very well played game. And then you had the game in Utah, which, was also spectacularly played. And then you had that 1-0 shutout against Columbus, which, you're going to get goalied. I mean, Columbus has been pretty good. They've been kind of playing over their expectations. And, I thought the Rangers handled them pretty well, And then obviously you have the win against Ottawa. Unfortunately, the loss against Montreal. But the Philly win, too, was also kind of a sign that things are kind of looking good, because Philly, for all intents and purposes, is a very stingy team. You watch how they play against New Jersey. You watch how they play against Ottawa. At least, actually, they played Ottawa, I think, right before either Ottawa played before the Rangers, but the Flyers were playing some games around the time that both teams had played on the 23rd. And the Flyers were really stingy, and the Rangers just took it to them. I mean,
Yep.
say what you want about the skill that team has, but if there's one thing that everyone knows that a John Tortorella team does, is they work. And they certainly, even though they're not the greatest in the standings, that's a team you can't sleep on. And they're technically still in the race right now. And you just can't fall asleep on them. So I thought the Rangers handled them pretty well. and obviously you have the 2 days off after that, and then you have your two losses. Which I'll mention the Colorado game again, all because of a dumb pass. They probably would if that pass didn't happen. Obviously, we know the point streak would have gone up to 11, and who knows, maybe they would have won, and then maybe things wouldn't look so dire. Like you said, Carolina is a cup contender. As much as we like to rag on them, they're still in the conversation every single year, regardless of however you feel or think about the team. So, as sucky as it is for them to lose to a division opponent, and obviously, Carolina has had the Rangers number this season so far. Um, you still have to give them credit for that. They took advantage of an opportunity and they capitalized, and the Rangers didn't. But so we talk about just the schedule now, just over this stretch. We've seen obviously a massive improvement in play. So which players do you kind of point out or can tell that or what kind of player can you point out or players that have jumped out to you during this stretch that you think could probably, kind of make sort of a bigger impact in the next couple of days?
Well, we spoke about this a couple of times already, both in the group chat and on the site in articles, and I believe on the pod too. It's the Borgen Miller pair. That pair has almost single handedly given the Rangers life because they are what you expect of a shutdown pair. They are primarily defensive zone starts against top competition, top lines. And it's not just about keeping the puck out of your own net, because we've seen, say, Stahl and Holden, for those of us who want to twitch a little bit, keep
Oh
the puck
boy.
out of their own net in the regular season, but get caved in while doing it. And then in the playoffs, they go and do what they did in the playoffs that year. We're not going to relive that. But that was a shutdown pair for the Rangers. That did not work. K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba as a shutdown pair did not work. Borgen has that skill set that we've spoken about, which is getting the puck out of the zone and transitioning to play up the ice. And that's what the Miller-Borgen pair is doing now, is they're finishing shifts in the offensive zone. I don't think that's something that is being talked about enough. We can say what we want about shutdown pairs and their goal to keep the puck out of the net and not get caved in. But to simplify it, it's, obviously keep the puck out of your own net, but finish your shift in the offensive zone. And they're doing that. And we can point to it, whatever we want. Vaakanainen, we can talk to Vaakanainen, Schneider getting better, Lindgren not being as terrible as he was to start the season, Zibanejad starting to wake up a little bit. It's that second pair that is giving the Rangers life, along with, as Luker likes to point out, their power play bender every now and then.
Interesting. Definitely. No, I definitely echo that sentiment. You can, and I actually just coming soon onto the website, I actually have an article where I write about, well, we have an article highlighting Will Borgen, but we also have one highlighting Urho Vaakanainen. It's only fair, but no, they've definitely gotten a lot better on the back end. You can see that they've become more of like a cohesive unit, so to speak. And it's amazing how much Jacob Trouba was actually really holding this team down. Like, you don't want to, sit and kind of rag on the guy a little bit, but clearly he was deficient to a point where once they got comfortable, they went on a run. It's amazing. You take out the common denominator of what's gone wrong, and obviously you have your thoughts about Lindgren, but that's another discussion for another day.
Yeah.
But I also think that, Riley Smith has been a pleasant surprise. Not that we didn't expect him to do well, but you really begin to see him sort of kind of fitting in a little bit more now. Now I know it's January, but he's really begun to kind of, not that he was invisible before, but you could tell he was still looking for some sort of fit, especially with the ranks in the team. But with the Cooley, Zibanejad, Smith line, even though they're not really much of an offensive line these days, Riley Smith is somehow finding his way with the puck on his stick and probably in the back of the net. One of the things that I liked about Smith was his shorthanded goal against the Utah Hockey Club. And it just goes to show you he still has a little bit left in the tank. So he's definitely been one that's definitely helped out. Obviously, Sam Carrick and Adam Edstrom.
Yeah.
I mean, those two have been just absolutely awesome. Actually, in the Colorado game, they were actually one of the better lines out there. They put out the first after the Rangers went down two. They, I think Rempe or Edstrom put one on net, and Carrick banked it in. But including his overtime goal early in the month, Carrick has been nothing but phenomenal. And look, you give Matt Rempe credit. He's also been one that's helped spark this team. Whether you want to talk,
Yes.
we've talked about this ad nauseum, but you cannot deny the impact that he's had not only off the ice, but he's actually been really good on the ice too. I mean, that one goal he scored against Ottawa was just absolute filth.
That was a nice shot. That was a nice shot.
I was so shocked by that. And even with the goal horn going off in the arena, I had no idea that he could even do that. But you mentioned this before, Dave. You said that once Rempe just does what he's supposed to do, he will be an effective player, like positioning and where he puts himself or what he does with the puck. And now that he'll still go into the corner, and everybody anticipates it, which I love. He'll go at the Garden. He goes into the corner and he gets ready for the hit, but he's more selective instead of just tossing his body around. So it's undeniable that Matt Rempe has had an impact, and it just kind of seems like the team just likes him there.
Well, he's been fine. He's been allowed to actually play his game, and that's something that we've all been harping on since he made his debut. Once there were two things. Once he figured out that he didn't need to be, that guy and run everybody. That was half the battle, and then he had to kind of get the refs off his ass, which it looks like they're finally starting to let him play, and he was no longer a sideshow.
Mm-hmm.
He can be an effective hockey player if they let him be himself and not be a sideshow. And post suspension, he's been solid. He's not.
Yes,
He gets way too much credit for the Rangers and this run, but he also gets way too much hate for being a fourth liner and a goon and whatever somebody wants to call him. The truth is in the middle. He's an effective hockey player, an effective fourth liner who unfortunately got caught up in some of the hype and some of the sideshow aspect. And now that has hopefully settled and moved past, hopefully he can be an effective fourth liner because we've seen him at his peak, and this is what I think his peak is right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just to touch on that a little more, first of all, you can definitely see how it's impacted both Carrick and Edstrom. They seem to play with a little, it's not, this is no diss on Jimmy VC or Johnny Brodzinski, but you can tell there's a little bit more of, gusto when they're all on a line together. I mean, especially Edstrom. I mean, it helps that both of them are basically best friends. So that kind of adds into it. But also you have two very sizable guys, and Sam Carrick's no slouch either, but you basically have skyscraper 1 and skyscraper 2 on your flank and you on your wings, so it basically allows you to do a bit more in terms of just kind of getting around and playing your game. So like you said, although he's not the one that should receive all the credit, he definitely has been playing a part. And then I will say this too. Yeah. And I will say this, as much as we rag on him, as much as we, kind of, and he's had his missteps still, Ryan Lindgren has not been terrible. I mean, yeah, there have been some instances like the game against Colorado where he just was it Lehkonen that was just standing right behind him, uncontested in front of the net. But he's definitely looked a lot better, more competent, so to speak, where it seems like he's beginning to maybe sort of just kind of know his limitations, because how hockey players are.
Value.
Well, that too. Hopefully, get Zach Jones in there before anything. But
oh god, I'd kill for a Jones Fox pair just to get Lindgren off that pair, but I know that's never happening.
Which is unfortunate because I think they'd be really good too. But I don't know how damaged that relationship is with Zach Jones and the Rangers. Hopefully, it's repair. You can fix it. It's not irreparable.
Yeah, there you go.
So, but yeah, just so some of those guys who I think have just been kind of notable. I mean, just the whole team has played pretty well. And even in the losses outside of the blowouts, and even in the Carolina blowout, they just look more engaged. They haven't exactly looked like they've given up. They're in it to win it, as they say. And I'm kind of happy. It sucks they lost those 2 games though. I was at the Carolina game, and Frederick Anderson was just, I mean, Igor wasn't spectacular himself, but you know what? Let's touch on that again. Let's touch on Igor again now that I think about it.
Oh
So
God,
briefly, Dave.
because of the Logan Thompson extension, people are going
Oh,
nuts.
okay. Okay.
People are.
Look,
I'm so annoyed with this topic,
no.
honestly.
Well, well, when I saw that tweet, and this is not a disrespect to the person who wrote it, I'm not going to say his name. I have no problem with the guy, but I think that's a very flawed argument because it's very similar to comparing apples and oranges because you're basically comparing a guy who's having one good season against a guy who's having sort of, you know, kind of a good, but not regular Igor season. When you pay somebody, you pay them for not only what they've done, but what they can do. So not to say that Logan Thompson's terrible, but Logan Thompson, I mean, the Capitals, let's just say goaltending's not exactly their forte lately. Um, they're paying Logan Thompson accordingly to his market value. But Logan Thompson is not Igor. So Logan Thompson's not going to command 11 and change. Igor Shesterkin will win you games. I don't think Logan Thompson can do that. So comparing the numbers together when it comes to market value, I thought the argument was very disingenuous. No disrespect to the guy who put out the tweet, but I think your argument's kind of sucky. But
Well,
anyways,
it's not just that tweet though, and that one was on Twitter. I had a couple people on Blue Sky, which is much more open to actual conversation. And he basically was in my mentions calling. He had a couple of nicknames for Shesterkin that shit Sturkin, some
Piggy
crap
Iggy,
like that,
were you
something
fighting with
like that.
Stan?
And it,
Were
and
you
it
fighting with
wasn't
Stan
Stan
Fischler?
Fischler. It wasn't Stan Fischler. Believe there. I don't think Stan Fischler knows what Blue Sky is, but he's also 109 years old and should have retired, before I was born. But that's a whole separate story. Um, but yeah, it's that, and it's just like you're paying. First off, the Caps may or may not get more seasons like this out of Logan Thompson. They're banking that they are, but he's a $6 million goalie because you just don't know. He's also 30 something.
Right.
Shesterkin he just turned 28 in December.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he doesn't have the NHL miles on him. He's got some KHL miles, but no NHL miles that much.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, and you're getting a top 3 goalie in the NHL. Like even Lundqvist had a quote unquote down year, but again, I'm going to keep quoting Luker on this. He puts out those Shesterkin Lundqvist trackers. Shesterkin is pacing he's pacing Lundqvist in his, I think it's goal saved above expected.
Mm-hmm.
He's pacing Lundqvist. You know how difficult that is to do? Lundqvist is
Incredibly.
that run Lundqvist had through, I want to say 2006 through 2016. The nearest goalie to him in raw goal save above expected in that time period was like 50 goals below him or something absurd.
Wow.
Now, obviously, Carey Price was still getting into it. And if you compare career to career, it's much closer with Price and Lundqvist. And it's fair to say they're on the same level. Price didn't have many good Montreal teams. Let's be real here.
Yeah.
But Shesterkin is pacing this. And it's not just about quality of team, it's quality of shots faced. We've seen the quality of shots Shesterkin is facing. So, like, there's a reason why you're paying him $11 million. Logan Thompson may or may not be worth it. Shesterkin is. And you're also getting the goalie that, look at his playoff numbers. I mean, he's had, one bad playoff game ever? And I'm not counting that stupid COVID play-in tournament.
Nope. You're right. No,
It's
you're
been
100% right.
absurd. Like, what are we even arguing about here? The cap's
Right.
going up to $95 million next year. It's probably hitting over 10% on 95, 9 point. Let's just call it 105 million. It's over 100 million in 2 seasons. What the fuck are we worried about right now with this contract? It's going to be under 10% of the cap in 2 years. We expected that in 5. Come on,
Right.
people.
Yeah, and that was my main thing when they signed him to that deal. It's like the NHL's done really well. You know for a fact that they're that they can afford it. That's why they were so once they were able to get the number that they wanted, it was I also think too they were waiting for some stuff on the NHL that would be announced before they came out with that. I also think that deal was announced way beforehand. They just announced it at the time they did for reasons, but that's beside the point. But yeah, I just saw a lot of that on the timeline and I just, as much as you want to rag on him, and yeah, he's given up a couple of bad goals here and there, but then the guy's human, so it's bound to happen. But he's definitely been a big part. Obviously, you want to mention Jonathan Quick too. He's had some pretty good games as well. Um, but Jonathan Quick's another conversation for another day. Anyways, so
Before we move on, I do want to talk the Will Cooley line, Cooley,
okay,
Zibanejad, Smith, because you brought it up, and I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's another line that is being unfairly hated on because obviously Mika Zibanejad is struggling and not having a great year. They're saying Zibanejad, they meaning people who are focusing on the last 5 games and not anything else. They're saying Zibanejad killed Cooley's production. But in saying that, you're ignoring, I think it's like the 6 or the 7 games before where Cooley put up straight goose eggs and was like a -2 or a -3 in 6 games with Hedel and
Berard
and who? Berard, yes.
it might have been Berard was also a mix of Brodzinski.
True. But we're looking at people are looking at this like, oh, he moved to Zibanejad's line and now he's not scoring. First off, like you said, they're playing a little bit more of a shutdown role, which is fine. Not ideal, but Cooley's a solid player, and Riley Smith has been well above what I expected of him.
Mm-hmm.
And Cooley wasn't producing in the 6-7 games beforehand, and the Rangers are winning. They're 8-3-3.
Mm-hmm.
Don't miss the forest for the trees, folks. I'm going to keep saying that. Don't miss the forest for the trees.
Right.
Focused on one thing, you're going to miss something else. If you focus, like when you're watching a game live, if you focus on the puck, you're going to miss the guy cutting down the seam.
Mm-hmm. Right. And just to add to that briefly, I think just those 3 work really well together. And I think Laviolette really kind of found his sort of shutdown line. And Rob has said it many times here on the pod that Zibanejad at this point is useful as sort of like your Philip Dano. But the thing too that has come to light now is that Mika's actually generating some offense on that line. And yeah, he's had a couple of hiccups here and there. Again, everybody's human, but it looks like he's doing a lot better overall, just moving the puck around, being engaged. And I think at some point, some goals have to go in. And if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that Cooley had at least 1 or 2 goals taken away from him over this sort of stretch. I can't remember exactly when, and my brain is failing me right now because, my brain is mush tonight too. But there have been some instances where they've been able to kind of, go out there and produce some offense. But if you see it as that line being a shutdown line, they're doing a good job. And look, you want to talk about, because all this anger comes from the Capo Kako trade because it was Cooley, Kako, and Hedel. And look, I mean, let's be real. I mean, Hedel looks great and we all love him, but he's not exactly lighting it up himself either, even when Kako was here. Will they look a little bit better because they're a little bit more experienced with Kako? Yeah. But still, they had the same effect that they had with Kako for most of the season they had with Berard. Very strong possession numbers, just couldn't finish. So it's not much different in terms of how it looks. And honestly, I think Cooley is a better fit with Zibanejad and Smith than he is on any other line outside of Panarin. And you really want to get on somebody not producing. I mean, we could go on a whole diatribe about Alexis Lafreniere, who just kind of became a ghost. But we don't want to do that because he plays on the line with Panarin. But that's another conversation for another day. So I definitely do agree with you on that. Now, just to touch on this quickly before we get to our questions. So on Saturday afternoon, the New York Rangers decided to, pretty much lock in defenseman Will Borgen. They signed him to what I think is a 5-year deal. Just trying to look up the number for the cap. It was about 4 million. I think 4.1 mil for 5 years. So you essentially, I mean, honestly, I think with this, I really think they're going to keep Andre Miller now. So just quickly, give me your thoughts on the contract in relation to the cap, because I know there's some people that are not too thrilled with it, but the contract in relation to performance, the cap, and what it means for not only the Rangers but also Andre Miller.
So I put this out there, and first on the Borgen contract, and you saw my initial reaction in the group chat. I went through a whole range of emotions with it.
Yes, you did.
And
that's right.
Most of it was sticker shock. Most of it comes with sticker shock. I saw 4.1 million and I went, are you kidding me? They're spending $4 million on Borgen. And then I took a step back and I was just like, wait a second. What the hell am I upset about on this? He is fine. I don't know how else to put it. He is pre-Tampa Anton Strawman.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
So he is a guy that, as I said, moves the puck up the ice. He is good on his skates. And you know what? He's not flashy. He may not be your favorite defenseman. He may not be the guy that you would build a team around. But that's fine. He's a steady role player. And I'm not necessarily a big fan of committing 5 years to what amounts to a role player. But, $4 million is less than 4% of the $95 million cap that we're expecting. I would prefer it not be 5 years, but to be fair, it's more like a 2-year deal. And then every year thereafter, a 10-team no trade is easily manageable. Then that goes to a 6-team no trade in his 4th year, which is very easy to manage. And then it's and then he has absolutely no trade protection at all in the final year of his contract when he's 33. So it's essentially 2 years of Borgen, and then we'll see what happens. So 1 more year with Laviolette, then whoever the next coach is, because that's when Lavi's contract is up, they'll see if he fits the next system. If not, they got 22 teams they could trade him to. I'm not that concerned. He's a fine defenseman.
Right. And also, too, I think what people have to kind of get out of their heads is that not every contending team is built the same, because there have been Stanley Cup winning teams that have had defensemen of players that you would never expect would win. I mean, even though Colorado had a bunch of high-end talent, their defensive depth was probably not as good as one expected. I mean, they had Jack Johnson, for goodness sake. And it's no slight on Jack Johnson, but at his point of his career, he's not exactly the same Jack Johnson that was drafted back in the early 2000s. So, but,
that was post Rangers Jack Johnson too, right?
Yeah. It was like a year. I think it was the following
It was
season,
the following
actually.
year, right?
It was the following year,
ragged. Yeah, we had ragged on
Yeah.
Jack Johnson all year round. And then he goes and he plays a decent role in a cup-winning team.
Yeah. So I saw that, people were kind of getting on, just the contract, and rightly so. You have every right to do that. I'm not, who am I to tell you what to say and not to say? But I guess in just terms of thinking about it logically, Borgen, as Rob likes to touch on, but just also what the stats tell you is that Borgen is probably one of the better defensemen who gets the puck out of the zone. And again, I will reiterate this, and just like Rob said on the podcast not too long ago, is that you need defensemen to get out of the zone. The Rangers match up fairly well with the Panthers on many things. But one of the things that they could never do was get the puck out. And that was what killed them. And they got a guy who can do that. And to a degree, Urho Vaakanainen as well. But he hasn't been signed to a contract extension yet. I think he's still under team control, if I remember correctly.
He is a restricted free agent.
Yeah. So he'll be here for a bit, pretty much. But so
Maybe,
depending if they want to trade him. But I think they'll keep him, give him a bridge deal.
I think they'll keep him, but I think whether they keep him or not is wholly dependent on the trade deadline.
Also, Ryan Lindgren too. Honestly,
well, that's what I mean by trade deadline. Good God, they need an upgrade on. If they want to be a real team, they need an upgrade on him. But we've beat that topic to death.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this, and now we'll move on to questions after this. When you mentioned Roman Yossi, now I'm kind of having fever dreams about it. I think that would be pretty cool.
I didn't think. Listen, that was a shot in the dark. Hey, watch Nashville. You never know what they're going to do. I really hope that doesn't grow legs, because that was just me throwing a name at a wall.
I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, you know.
Listen, I'm not going to complain about Yossi. The only thing I'd be concerned about is he is in his mid-30s at this point. I think he's older than you, JL. So JL's like the resident baby of the group.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. You made me feel
maybe
old
in terms
and young
of age, not in terms of whining. All right. All right, people.
I tell everybody to be nice to Dave, and this is what I get.
Well, you were bound to feel my wrath at some point. I mean,
at some point.
Well, you probably never even had a dial-up modem. You probably went straight into the age of, I got everything at my fingertips. Hey, look at me. I got all the answers I need.
No, actually, that's incorrect. We did have dial-up. I'm not as young as you think, but I'm also not as old as some young people think I am. So I remember we had a dial-up modem. We had a T3 at one point. Didn't expect me to say that.
You never had a 14.4 or 28.8, did you?
Probably not. But we did. We did
just
have
said probably not, so you have no idea what I'm talking about. There are at least 3 people listening to this that smiled when I said a 14.4 modem or a 28.8 modem.
Maybe we did.
It was like news when you got a 56K modem.
Well, from what I can, maybe we did. I just don't remember, because my dad was very tech savvy. But I do remember having a dial-up modem, because we did have America Online, and we definitely did have to use our modem. And get off the phone, John Luke, or get off the internet. I got to go on the phone, John Luke. All that. So let's not get ahead of ourselves here, okay?
Hold on. Which version of America Online did you have?
Oh my gosh, Dave, you really think I can remember that? I just remember having it America Online from like 1997 until 2003.
Oh, so you're already at AOL like 4.0.
Yeah.
But so still. you want to hear something funny? You'll appreciate this. This is an insight into my youth. My dad, also tech savvy, and you're going to laugh at this. We had AOL 2.5 at the time.
Okay.
That was like the first version of AOL that blew up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Windows 3.1.
Wow.
And I was 9-10 years old, and Lego had just released a computer game, and I really wanted it for Christmas. And I got it for Christmas, but then my dad said, why don't you read the system requirements? And it requires Windows 95. And I got really upset that we didn't have Windows 95. And on Christmas Eve, my dad updated to Windows 95 so I could play it. That was one of the coolest things. That's one of the Christmas memories that really stands out for me. And yeah, it's weird, the Jews celebrating Christmas, but there's a lot of us that deal with it. But that was one of the best Christmas memories, and that does date me a little bit, because I got Windows 95.
Right.
That was awesome. You probably didn't even start. And if you said 97, you maybe just got Windows 95 or were on Windows 98 at that point.
Just about, because I remember when we upgraded from, I think we did have 95, but we did have a computer that had the last version of Windows before 95. I think that was what?
That was 3.1.
3.1, yeah. So we had that, because I remember using that interface, and it was very basic. And then I remember using 95 briefly, and then we used 98 for the majority of my childhood up until I think we had Windows 2000. We did not get ME, because ME was awful. My dad knew that. And then we had XP. But all throughout that time, we had America Online and Netscape Navigator, which is now Firefox. So I may be quote unquote young, but I have a very long history with tech, because did I have friends back in the day? No, I played Need for Speed on my computer as a kid, and then watched Met games. and Ranger games. Like, what do you want me to do? But anyways,
Yeah, you just got really dark and depressing real fucking fast. What the hell was that?
I don't know. But anyways, back to a happier topic because we could sit here and talk old tech, especially this guy. So
I don't know, man. Listen, my friend just told me that I could download the old school versions of StarCraft and Brood War for free off of the BattleNet website, and I did. So now I'm just waiting for a time where I'm going to have more than 8 minutes to myself, and I'm going to literally sit there and I'm going to play those games and relive my early teenage years before I discovered, college, basically.
well, I'm sure you're familiar with emulation, and I mean, you could probably get a lot of mileage out of that, especially if your computer's pretty decent. But but
I mean,
anyways, we'll have to do a
yeah,
whole episode about that because we'll be here all night. But nice
I
one.
could talk all night about this shit.
Yeah, me too. All right, so let's get into some questions here. I just love that. I'm sure someone's listening right now. They're just like, "What the heck are these old barfs talking about?"
There's definitely, I would say 30% of the listenership is listening going, the fuck is Windows 3.1?
Yeah. What's Windows 95?
What
I've
is
never heard of that
America
before.
Online? Is that another one of those political things?
Goodness gracious. All right.
Windows 95? I wasn't even born yet.
Oh, don't even get me started on that, David, because I'll be here all night. But anyways, you're triggering me, David. Okay.
That's the whole point. Yes, I'm
I know.
aware. It's about time I got some revenge on you, dickhead.
And the funny part is this: if I ever meet Dave in person for the first time, I'm sure he'll probably be just the same way. So, but anyways,
Yeah,
um,
this is me. Becky and Rob can certainly vouch for that. I'll
yes,
be at
no.
the March 5th game. Carly and
Oh,
I are doing a
oh,
fundraiser,
that's right. Yes,
and
yeah.
it's the same fundraiser we did last year. So,
I
I'll
might,
actually, plug that a little bit as we get closer. But yeah, I'll
hmm
be at that one.
I might be at that game then, and I might actually be able to say hi to the guy who's been publishing my stupid articles. Anyways, all right, questions. So, we've got a few on Blue Sky. We definitely have one on Twitter. So I'll get to the one on Twitter first because that's the only one we received. And this comes
Boo,
from,
Twitter. Get
yeah,
off of Twitter.
this
Boo,
comes
Twitter.
this
Sorry.
comes this comes from Nick Fischetti at
Oh, I like
nfischetti24.
Nick. I like Nick.
And Nick asks you, my question is, how is Dave doing? Because I haven't seen his face in what feels like ages.
Well, Dave is currently not on Twitter. Dave scrubbed his entire Twitter, including every including his profile picture. It's just a black screen now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Dave's alive. Dave is breathing. Dave is surviving. Two kids under 4 years old. Dave is surviving winter with two kids in daycare. Which, for anybody with kids, you know that we're getting sick every other day in this house now. Um, Dave is talking in the third person. It's a little bit weird. But yeah, I mean, I'm here. I have said this a couple of times. I haven't been able to really watch the games with the attention to detail that I prefer. Either it's bedtime or I just can't keep my eyes open. As you guys are well aware, I go to bed at like 9:30 now.
Yeah, this is late for
But
Dave right now. I'm keeping him up against his will.
yeah, seriously. The hell, man. I gotta take my gummy and go to sleep.
Well, that's going to be me, except instead of a gummy, it's Tylenol. But anyways, all right. So that's your status update on Dave. He's alive
Wait,
and
that was the
well.
Nick. That really that was the question?
Literally, that was the question.
Oh,
That was,
thanks for thinking of me, Nick. I'm alive. I
very
swear. I'm
nice.
here. I'm
That's
here.
very nice of him. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was actually really nice to see.
yeah. That was a
All
nice
right.
question. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that.
All right. Next question. This is on Blue Sky. This comes from our good buddy, Mr. Rob Saletti at robsaletti.bsky.social. And when he's not saving the world currently, he's asking, did you agree with Laviolette jumbling the lines going into the third versus Carolina, even though the Rangers had the edge in play in terms of shots, chances, and XG? Unfortunately, this reminded me of Gallant's famous line blender versus Detroit, which completely screwed the 22-23 season, but maybe I'm overreacting.
So first things first, Rob, Becky, congrats on the new house. I hope the move goes well.
Yes. Congrats. Also, happy birthday to Becky, by the
Oh
way.
yes, happy birthday, Becky! Yesterday,
And
so we're
she
recording Wednesday. So Tuesday was her birthday. Happy birthday! You
and she
are
did not
officially
like
old.
and she did not like that I called her girl Rob. So
That was funny. So you called her girl Rob. Stoot calls her mom, which is hilarious. And I texted her a Golden Girls gift for her birthday, and so
Oh my
she got all
goodness.
the turning old
Oh
crap from all of us,
man.
which is hilarious.
Wow.
Anyway, to answer Rob's question, I don't like jumbling lines mid game unless there's a clear message to send. And overall, like you said, they weren't bad, but there were very specific plays that they probably needed a wake up call.
Yeah.
Passing on back passing on breakaways is
Oh,
something that
we
I'm
didn't
going to. Holy crap, that was
I
bad.
I didn't even mention it because I knew that it was gonna get me. Because I'm telling you, sitting in the arena when he did that, I don't think I put my head up. Like, after that puck went in, when it came back the other way, I just kept my head down. That's how
That was the turning point in the game.
I was embarrassed at that because that's the second time they've done that this month. With Ironically enough, it's the same two guys. First it was Smith looking for Trocheck, and then it was Trocheck looking for Smith. Like, how do you not why does everybody want
Yeah.
to do a Blake Como impression for? I don't understand. You know
So,
what?
and then there was also the Panarin thing that Valaket called out in the first intermission.
Mhm.
Drawing a blank on the exact play, but those two things, you can make a case that the Rangers were sleepwalking through that game. Maybe, I don't know, they all got the flu. Maybe they all just like couldn't sleep the night before. Maybe they just all had a bad day at the same time. I don't know.
Mhm.
But overall, like Rob said, they were fine, but there were pockets where you could tell they were making dumb mistakes.
Oh,
And I think
yeah.
that's what Laviolette was trying to do. So I don't think, Rob, you're overreacting, but I think there's some context missing in it.
Yeah, the thing I noticed about that in relation to the line blender, and just before I go into that, I don't think Laviolette is the type of coach to necessarily, at least when things are going somewhat good, to kind of change things just like Gallant did. So I do give him the benefit of the doubt for that. So we'll probably see the same, lines that were in the first, period, last game, the regular lines, so to speak. So I don't think there's going to be much of a change in that aspect. Um, but you know, yeah, like you said, they definitely needed a wake up call, and maybe I didn't mention this because again, brain mush, but just in that whole game, like you said, they needed a wake up call. There were too many plays where they were just overpassing the puck. There was one play that I saw stand out in particular where it was Alexis Lafreniere was coming into the zone, and I think he had two guys on him, and all he had to do was get it in deep. But I think he ended up dropping the pass off to nobody, like a drop pass to nobody behind him, or the intended target was covered. I can't remember the exact play, but there were a few instances where instead of getting the puck deep, or instead of going down low harder, they were just kind of there. And Carolina, after a certain point, ended up pouncing on it. So just to touch on Rob's question real quick is, um, I don't agree with line blenders unless like you said, they serve a purpose. I mean, you just kind of want to keep the guys there, but I mean, they were really, I don't want to say they weren't struggling, but you can tell that he was trying to get something going. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, the line that he was throwing out a lot was Kreider, Hedel, and Panarin, on many occasions in the offensive zone. And, you want to talk about someone who needed a lesson. I mean, Chris Kreider was arguably one of the worst forwards on the ice the other night. His basically lazy turnover is what led to that third period goal at the start. And then it just kind of fell apart from there. So, do I agree with it fully? No, but does it have to be done sometimes? Yeah. That night, like you said, they kind of needed it. They were just kind of there. So, I definitely agree with that in that aspect. So, all right, next question. This comes from Captain Jack NYR B Sky Social. I think you said he's a Patreon member, correct?
Yes. So, Cap, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. the Patreon is really how I'm able to pay the writers, and pay JL. So thank you guys.
Yes,
Really
thank you.
appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. So he has actually 3 questions. So we'll get to his first 2 here. We'll put them all together. Well, the second part of this, it's basically like a 2-part first question, and then he has another question in relation to a trade. So we'll touch on that. But his first question says, Hedel has good chemistry with Cooley and Lafreniere so far in his young career. What do you think of that line of Cooley, Hedel, and Lafreniere? And then he asks, moving up Edstrom to take Hedel's to Cooley's spot. So it would be Edstrom, Mika, and Smith.
I don't like breaking up the bottom 6 just yet. Now, if you're talking future, then Cooley, Hedel, Laff, assuming Hedel is still a Ranger by the time that line can be put together. I really like that line. That is a north-south, east-west line that forechecks, that back checks, that is a menace in all 3 zones, plays two-way hockey. I love the potential of a Cooley, Hedel, Laff line. That line
Mm-hmm.
at even strength could probably put up what you think each one of them can get 15 goals at 5-on-5 easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah,
That's 45 goals at even strength between the 3 of them. That's a lot. That second line production. I don't like the idea of moving Edstrom up in the lineup. And now we're focusing solely on this year. I don't think you break up that 4th line. I think that's been one of the only consistent bright spots. I think you have to keep it.
Absolutely. No, 100%. And this kind of reminds me a little bit. Well, first I'll say Cooley, Hedel, Laffy in the future would be great. But I think right now, I think Cooley should stick with Zibanejad and Smith just solely because, maybe there's still some things that Cooley could learn, but also just kind of get him a little bit more defensively responsible. Not to say that he never was, but you can never learn too much in the NHL at least. Then moving Edstrom up with Mika and Smith. I mean, it's maybe if Edstrom could show me a little bit more offense in terms of just generating it consistently. Not to say that he doesn't, but he's a 4th line player for a reason at this point in time. If he can show me that at some point, then maybe, because I think that could really be a big boon to Zibanejad. But just in terms of the 4th line, it's such a small sample size, and I understand that you kind of have to deal with Mika Zibanejad in his contract, so you kind of have to work around it. So, I mean, would I try it in the future, maybe 2-3 years down the line if they're still here? Absolutely, I would, especially if Edstrom shows me a little bit more offensive upside. But like you said, I'm not breaking up that 4th line. That's an energy line. They bring a lot to the team. I really think that they should just stick together for this season and maybe even next season as well, because Carrick is here for another 2 seasons, and Edstrom is under team control. Rempe's under team control. So I think that's going to be your 4th line for the next 2 seasons. And then his next question was, what do you guys think of this? So it's a trade proposal. It's Braden Schneider, Brennan Othman, Brody Lamb, Zach Jones, and the Rangers' 2025 4th rounder to Buffalo for Bowen Byram, Jordan Greenway, and Connor Clifton, who will be 50% retained next year, 25-26. Yeah, I'm going to have to shoot that down too. If they're going to give that much, honestly, if they're going to give that much in a trade, you're giving me Alex Tuck. I'm sorry. Like that Schneider and Othman, I mean, honestly, they're not going to trade Schneider for JT Miller. I don't think they're going to trade him for Bowen Byram. I think you could probably get Bowen Byram for less, honestly.
And also, Jordan Greenway really isn't that good.
He's just a body. I've seen him play. He's
enormous.
But Adam Edstrom is the same way. Honestly,
yeah.
You're pretty much getting.
You don't need Greenway.
Yeah, you're getting this probably the same amount of production, even more, probably for less. So but if I'm trading Schneider anywhere, it's Tuck.
Yeah. So I would do Schneider in a deal for. Well, let me back that up. I don't think Schneider is nearly as untouchable as the Rangers front office makes him out to be. So I disagree there, which is fine. I'm not, I'm going to disagree with them on some things. I'm going to agree with them on some things. I'm not running the team. And I'm sure there's 99% of you out there that are happy I'm not running the team. But if I'm Drury and I'm thinking like Drury, the only player that Schneider is going for is Elias Pettersson. I don't think Schneider is on the table for anything. If I'm going to break this down a little bit, if the prize cap is Byram, then you could probably get him for Keandre Miller, 1-for-1 swap. Othman, this is an interesting one. I'm going to again use Pedersen and use Shayna Goldman's Athletic article today. We seem to forget that the Jack Eichel trade was what, Tuck, Krebs, and a first for Eichel, roughly?
Just about.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. I think there were a couple of spare parts in there.
Mm-hmm.
The Tuck player on the Rangers is probably Lafreniere.
Mm-hmm.
Krebs would be Othman. And a first-round pick. Would I deal Laff, Othman, and a first for Pedersen? In a heartbeat.
100%.
So I don't think that would happen. And then I'm looking at the other guys. Clifton's a guy. Greenway's a guy. Byram would be a nice prize. And Zach Jones is going to get traded. Brody Lamb, don't sleep on him. That kid can shoot.
No, absolutely. I think he kind of, I guess, trajectory wise, I think he kind of just reminds me of Edstrom, where nobody expected him to make it, and I think he might have some use for this team down the line. I think.
I think
I
Hope is
think
pretty high on him too. Hope
yes, she
and Will,
is.
I believe, are both pretty high on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say this though, and then we'll go on to our last question. I don't necessarily disagree with you about Schneider being untouchable, but like you said, the only one that you would really want to trade him for is for Pedersen. But I just think
I mean,
Schneider.
that's just the one that's hitting the rumor mill with Pedersen. There are
Right.
plenty of other players I would trade him for, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like Drury wants to.
Right. And honestly, that's a fair assessment. Just off of the fact that how they went out of their way to basically draft him out of spite from New Jersey. Because imagine Schneider on the Devils. I mean, he'd probably be their second best defenseman, truth be told. You know. So yeah. So no, I wouldn't. That's a little too much for Bowen Byram. Like you said, you could probably get him for less, which would be Keandre Miller. You'd have to find a way to make the salaries work. Yada yada yada. This, that, and the fourth. So, all right. So final question, and this comes from the Gerard Gallant slander account, which I love to see every time it pops up on here, at Alan T. Anderson at bsky.social. So, we talked about Will Borgen getting 5 by 4.1. What does Urho Vaakanainen get?
All right. First, I'm just now realizing the username. Alan, thank you for the Patreon support as well. I really appreciate it.
Nice.
That took a second to click with me. So, okay. I'm pulling up Evolving Hockey's contract projections. And the reason why is Borgen, they had a 5-year deal with Borgen at $4.03 million. Borgen got 4.1. So they're pretty accurate with this stuff. They're usually within 10%. Vaakanainen is 25. Let's say they like him and they don't want to walk him directly to free agency, but they don't want to commit huge money, huge dollars and terms. So let's call it a 3-year deal. 3 years for Vaakanainen, $2.65 million. I'd do that. Bottom pair defenseman
100%.
who's shown steadiness and him and Schneider have looked better and better each game that they play. I'd do that.
Oh, 100%. No, I'd be on board for that. Because now what you do is once you lock him up at a reasonable deal, you essentially can navigate with more impunity just in terms of trying to get your other situations sorted. I mean, you look at the pairs now. I mean, the only one that's really sort of like a blemish really is Lindgren. It's going to all go back to Ryan Lindgren at some point.
He is by far the weakest link on the Rangers, and
yes.
I don't want people to. I love Ryan Lindgren, the player and the person. I know what he brings. He's just not effective anymore, and I think people really underestimate how much of an improvement the Rangers will have by simply, honestly, right now replacing him with Zach Jones.
Oh no, 100%. Um, like you said, I'll echo that sentiment too. I mean, I have the
And
guy's
Jones is
jersey for
replacement
goodness sake.
level. He's replacement level. I mean, he's nothing special right now. He could be, but right
Mm-hmm.
now he's not.
Right.
And just getting to replacement level with Fox, we've seen how bad Fox has looked when with Lindgren, and he was looking great with Miller to start the season.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. Yeah.
that's the weakest link on the Rangers right now, and I think people are really underselling how much of an improvement the Rangers would have by replacing Lindgren.
Right. And just to touch on that, Lindgren, solid defenseman for many years, was really an anchor with Fox on that first pair. They were really solid at one point, just doing everything they could, Lindgren putting his body on the line for this franchise,
Yep.
doing a lot, and it's well deserved. You give him his thanks, you give him his praises. You don't hate the player or just, the defenseman himself. It just gets to the point where people's time just has to end at some point.
Yep.
He's not an effective player anymore. This is very similar. Again, you don't want to have to keep drudging up the past, but this is very similar to Girardi and Stahl. The
Yep.
Rangers hung on to them too long. And look, Dan Girardi was one of my favorites. I love Dan Girardi, but it got to the point where G
He
couldn't
was
skate
bad.
because his
Yeah.
skate he would get hurt so much that his feet would swell up in his skates. And the same thing
Yep.
goes for Mark Stahl. Mark Stahl was a little bit more serviceable towards
He
the
would have
end of
been
his
fine
career.
had his brother not killed him.
Yeah, right. But then, after a bit, after you had the issues with the vision, and the incident, not only with his brother killing him, but also him getting hit in the face with a deflection in
Uh,
his defensive zone against Philly, which
oh, I
kind of
was at that game.
I'm sure that had to have been
That was
spooky.
weird. That was one of the weirdest moments I've had at MSG
I can
because
imagine.
you could hear a pin drop.
Oh,
Everybody knew what happened.
mm-hmm.
And it's the only time I've ever heard the Garden that quiet.
Wow. I mean, rightly
It was
so. I mean, that was
weird.
scary. That was scary. I mean, the guy basically
Yeah.
almost lost his eye, but yeah, no, we hung on to them for too long. This is when the boys club was still a thing, trying to grab onto the last remnants of that playoff run. It just couldn't sustain it anymore. So you don't want to make that. Luckily, at this point in time, we don't have two guys like that, but again, also two guys committed to huge amounts of money. But it, it comes to a point you just have to cut bait. So,
Yep.
and just going back to the question to put a pin on it, it's a great deal. It basically rounds out the decor, and if you can find a way to replace Lindgren on a reasonable term with a player who can be more than replacement level, then that
Jake
contract.
Wallman.
Well,
Jake
yeah, Brian
Wallman.
Dumoulin, Jake Wallman.
Okay, Hope.
No,
Sorry.
no, I think
Hope has monopolized use of Brian Dumoulin in the group chat. So we're gonna give her the credit on that. She's been
just like
all over him for a while.
yes, just like we get on Tyler for Yanni Gord.
Oh
So
my god. And me on the Girardi for Vatanen shit from God knows how long ago.
before I joined, I actually remember that.
Oh, that
So
was okay. So for those who don't remember or who weren't around, right before the Rangers re-signed Girardi before their 2014 playoff run, there was a rumor that the Rangers, if they couldn't re-sign Girardi, were going to trade him to Anaheim for Sammy Vatanen and Devontae Smith-Pelly.
oh my gosh, that would have been great.
So naturally, I was mildly upset over that. And we all saw what happened with Girardi. And then, yeah, that's the history lesson for the Rangers. And we all have that one guy that we're like, go get him. And yeah, mine
Is
right
it
now is Jake Wallman or
so?
Pedersen.
My guy before Pedersen, my guy for that outside of Panarin, well, Panarin was more of a shoo-in, but I knew he was going to be a Ranger. But the one guy that I had really want the Rangers to get back in the day was Ilya Kovalchuk. I would have moved heaven and earth to see him in a Ranger uniform. So much so, Dave, that when he announced that he was coming back to the NHL, I was 2 seconds away from ordering a Reebok customized 71 Ilya Kovalchuk jersey. I kid you not. Kovalchuk was my favorite player as a kid. I was devastated when he got traded to the Devils and then signed that dumb contract to begin with, which had killed me because 2012, I hated him seeing him on the other team, you know. So and
That
then
was a
when I
15-year contract, right?
17, I think.
So that contract
15.
would still be on the Devils' books.
Yeah, that's right. If it wasn't for the fact that the NHL
Since
decided to come in and say,
2012, I have
yeah.
gone through 2 girlfriends, married the 3rd one, moved, had 2 kids. We went through 3 different presidents at this point. We have gone through a pandemic, and they'd still have him on the books.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Good God.
Which I
Do
don't know what they
people
were
like? Do we not realize how dumb that loophole was? Where teams are just adding like 30 years onto the end of a contract
and you're
just to
getting
get the
paid like
cap hit down.
500K towards the end of the contract. Let me just pull up the number real quick. It was because I have to. Let's see. It was 17 years, $102 million.
Oh my God! Hold on. 102 divided by 17. That's 6 million a year.
Six
And I
million a
think
year.
the last like 7 years of that deal were like $525,000, which was the NHL minimum at the time.
Yeah. And then what ended up happening was they signed the deal. It was for 15 years, 100 million. So they had to just to shave off 2 years, which it's even crazy that even got approved to begin with. And then funny enough, he
He
retired,
just goes to the KHL after like a
which I
year or two. That's how
which
bad it is to play in New Jersey. Sorry, in it not New Jersey, in Newark.
in
Newark, the city at the time, if you were there, was a shithole. I'm not
well,
sure
it's
what it is right now, but
still kind of is,
it
but
still kind of is. Okay.
yeah. I
Like
mean, it's
that
gotten a little
era,
bit better, but yeah, it's not
I
great.
worked at Newark Penn Station during that whole debacle. Like
Oh,
the office I was at was in Newark Penn Station. And every time I had to take Jersey Transit out there, I'm like, I feel dirty just because it
yeah.
was Newark.
Yeah, but also it's just the place is just fugly. It's not a clean
Yeah.
place. Like
Yeah.
I'll go to Devil games, Ranger Devil games, and they have the gateway, so you can basically walk from the end of one part of Prudential, and you can go through basically a connection between those office buildings, and it takes you right into Penn or Newark
Yep.
Penn. And even that sometimes, like they just renovated it, so a lot of it is nice. But back in the day, it was kind of eh. And then you walk into Newark Penn just by itself, and I feel like you're gonna need a tetanus shot. And I'm not trying to dunk on it too much because it's a serviceable station for what it is. But I mean, I kind of don't blame him for saying, you know what, I don't want to do this and go back to Russia. I mean, which at least
He
at the
was
time,
probably like, I should have gone to the Rangers. I have
honestly, it
no
would
idea
have.
if the Rangers were involved in that.
Well, I do remember, and we'll end on this because that's the last of the questions. By the way, thank you very much, everyone who's listening and give us feedback and questions. We love answering them, and continue to give your input. And also, huge shout out to the Patreon guys. You guys make this engine run. So, I don't. So I am in the previous blog I used to write for. I put out that article. I put out two very controversial articles that led to a lot of my followers on Twitter at the time. Was I want Ilya Kovalchuk and I want Eric Carlson. Right. The Kovalchuk one was a little bit more negatively received because it's like, why do you want to get this guy? He's like old and this and that. And it turns out the guy
Why did
actually
you
was
do that
able
with
to.
a terrible Russian accent?
Well, I wasn't trying to do Russian, but if you want me to talk like this, I can do that a little bit.
You
Like
sound like my father-in-law.
Oh, David, you disappoint me.
No, he loves me, actually. He thinks
I
I'm
am
amazing. He
David.
thinks I'm cute old at this point.
You are great to my daughter. Okay, anyways, but
Basically, yes.
so I wrote that article about him and I got a lot of negative feedback, but he was serviceable for Montreal and the Kings. Granted, he wasn't the same anymore, but I think he played for Washington briefly too. I think Kovalchuk would have been fine here for like what $2 million he was looking for. Like, come on, we they wanted to give more money to Patrick Kane with one hip for goodness sake, you
Oh,
know.
God.
So I would have loved for that to happen, And it's the same thing with Yager when he came back from Russia. I wanted Yager to come back, but for some reason the Rangers didn't think it was a good idea. But anyways, that's a whole different conversation for
Yeah,
another day.
Rangers butchered
Anyways,
that one. Yeah.
oh well, jeez. But anyways, Dave, thank you so much. This has been another fantastic episode of Live from the Blue Seats. Any final words, Dave?
Yeah, I got one. I'm sure you guys have noticed when we talk Ryan Lindgren, we are very pointed in how we approach the conversation. This
Mm-hmm.
is lessons learned from how I in particular, handled conversations about Girardi and Stahl. I'm trying to be a little bit better because I, at the time, did not realize how I was coming off with those conversations. So I hope we're doing a better job with it. If not, let me know. But anyway, remember, it's never about the player, it's about the team and what works best for the team. Never about the player, unless the player's an asshole. Of which
Fair
Girardi
enough.
and Stahl were far from it. They were probably some of the nicest people on the team. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I could not get that point across. I was 30. I'm 40 now. You learn, you grow. Hopefully.
Fair enough. No, fair point. Fair. No, and just to piggyback on that, real quick. Whenever we make these criticisms, it's always about, on ice performance. It's never personal. None of our criticisms are ever personal, unless it's absolutely warranted where the person is a piece of crap. All of this is just
D'Angelo.
oh, don't get me
sorry,
started.
something caught my throat.
Well, that's another podcast for
Dude
another
was
day.
such a dick, even Russia kicked him out.
I know. Well, I think at some point we're just gonna have to have a venting session about him because I feel like it's gonna be warranted at some point.
We'll have to
especially
get Lou on the line just so that he can talk about the time that he challenged.
Oh, if we can get a guest on here. I don't see. Hey, listen, Lou, if you're listening, you want to come on? Hey, open invitation. We'll go
talk
we'll,
to D'Angelo fight.
we'll dunk on him. I don't care, and I'll tag him on Twitter too. So.
I don't know if I want a full damn episode to that, but that's just happened to be something that came up when you're like, it's never about the player unless the player's an asshole. And guess who the asshole was?
Tony D'Angelo. But in terms of Ryan Lindgren, it's I hear Lindgren's and then there's that report that came out that like the unsung leaders of the team now are Lindgren and Trocheck. But it's always about the performance.
Gets attention for it.
Of course,
unsung.
Well, I'm saying like that's what I read unsung because he's not officially a captain. But
whatever. Sorry.
But again, our criticisms of players outside of some obvious exceptions are all about the performance, not about the players' personal lives or just them in general. It's just about what can they bring to the team. So just want to preface that because I know online is very reactive. But anyways, that's our show for today. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Look for us on YouTube. We have some great things coming down the pipeline. Maybe a live stream, trade deadline. Who knows?
Yeah,
we're figuring it out. Can't confirm it just yet, but maybe we can do that, and maybe you might actually see our faces. I'm sure you'd want
to perhaps with another interesting, fun podcast group that we'll be doing that with. Maybe we'll see.
We'll
never
see.
know.
And we'll just yell at each other, but that's okay. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time out to listen. This has been Live from the Blue Seats. Catch you on the flip side, and let's go Rangers.